A brand is a specific expected experience. A lot of people try and shortcut that to say it's a promise. That's true, but only if you understand how the pieces work. You're setting up, when I go to see a James Bond film, I know exactly what I'm going to get. I'm going to get a guy who is all in, who always gets the bad guy, who always gets the girl, always like the guy you wish you could be. I think people just don't get that what you're really talking about is reputation and expectation. If all of a sudden James Bond is, 50 pounds overweight, riding a unicycle, juggling cats, I'm not going to believe that that's James Bond because it's not on brand.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Talk2Rami show. I am so excited because today is my favorite topic: branding, brand voice, personal brand, corporate brand. And Bill Harper, my dear friend and the CEO and the founder of BrandBossHQ, is here, guys. You should check him out, especially TikTok and Instagram. TikTok especially is free branding lessons. Listen to it, watch it. Bill, welcome back, my friend. I'm so happy you're back.
Thank you so much for having me again. Our first conversation was so good. I've been really looking forward to this. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. But before I start, let me tell you, I'm so impressed with your TikTok. And then I told all my business colleagues, all the friends, that guys, you should watch it because those are the valuable lessons. The last one about the Nike, that it's just amazing how to define the brand voice, branding, personal brand, and all these little bits of this knowledge that you in 30, 60 seconds is unbelievable, is so valuable. Thank you for doing that. And
thank you. I appreciate that very much. We actually started a new podcast called the $1 Billion Brand Podcast.
Oh, wow.
Me and a friend of mine, Brian Elliott, who has a podcast out of California. And so we kind of have been doing the East Coast, West Coast branding thing, which has been a lot of fun. So you'll have to check it out, see what you think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Lately, this is a question I get a lot. And when we talk to the clients, does my personal brand should match my corporate brand, or doesn't matter? Or this is what we get that all the time. And
that's such a great question. And I think there's a lot to ask about that before you give an answer, right? I know everybody wants what's the answer, right?
Yep.
But it's never quite that simple. So let's take a look at it a couple different ways. If your personal brand is attached to something that you specifically do, right? Then I think that they are very much aligned in terms of okay, I'm a consultant and I'm giving you information that shows a path to you being a better client with me. Then I think that those brands and the person are very much aligned. If it is that the person is a representative of a bigger entity, it might shift. It might be, here's why we do the things we do. Here's how we look at our business. Here's what is of interest to us right now that's influencing the way that our brand is developing. And I think in that instance, it might be different. So I don't know that there's a one-size-fits-all answer to that question. I think it really comes down to, what are you trying to achieve with your brand? Your personal brand has a brand promise the same way your corporation has a brand promise. I think the real question is what are you trying to achieve with it? So, a Tony Robbins brand promise, right? Which is progress. I mean, I'm paraphrasing and, Tony, I hope I'm doing a good job. But I think, what he's selling is this idea of momentum, right? Forward progress. I'm going to give you a new tool. I'm going to show you a new way to think about it. I'm going to get you unstuck so you can continue to get to that next level, that next level, that next level. I think that's very direct. If instead you were talking about a brand, let's say Tom's Shoes, and you were talking about why you gave a pair or different places that you saw that your company could be helpful in filling a need gap for society or for societies that we weren't directly connected to, but that desperately needed support, maybe it wouldn't so much be about the individual or what Tom's was doing per se, but it would be more about how do we look at need in the world, and how do we consider how a company like ours could be providing something to a group of people that didn't have it. So hopefully those are a couple of examples that would just be helpful for people trying to wrap their head around how to think about it.
And the next question that I get a lot, I know, thanks for explaining that, because this is kind of along with that, the branding and sales. I talked to a company and they said, oh, our sales is so connected to our branding. I said, yes, but it's not going to define your sales, your process. But that's totally different thing, because some companies, they think that, they can have a sales division with no branding. And
I don't know how those companies do that, because without knowing what the brand promise is,
exactly.
I'm not quite sure how. Now, that's not to say that the message isn't tailored to the audience. Right? There's an internal message that gets your people rallied together, and there's an external message for your consuming audience. And then I think there's also a sales message that goes to your sales group, especially if you're using a value-added reseller, or if you've got partners, or if you have sales and then sell through. Those things are certainly influenced by that. But I can't imagine a group where, well, I say I can't imagine. I see it all the time. But I can't imagine it working well that you have an entity that has a sales message that is wholly unique from the brand message that's going on. I think when those two things are not working together, you're missing a tremendous amount of opportunity for alignment and easing of sales, because that's really marketing's job, right? Marketing's job is to make sales easier. So the whole thing there is, if they're not working hand in glove together, they're not benefiting each other. And that's just inefficient.
And that's how, when we say that, you just mentioned the marketing, that's how I think the brand is a tool for the marketing. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the levels that I see it are that your brand purpose or brand promise is the foundation for everything. And I think that there's still a tremendous amount of misunderstanding about what a brand promise is.
Exactly.
Why don't I just go back even and just call it a brand? Because I still get this question all the time, and it's dumbfounding to me that with all the information out there, there's still so much confusion about it. A brand is a specific expected experience. That's what a brand is. A lot of people try and shortcut that to say it's a promise. That's true, but only if you understand how the pieces work. You're setting up. When I go to see a James Bond film, I know exactly what I'm going to get. I'm going to get a guy who is all in, who always gets the bad guy, who always gets the girl, who always stands up no matter how hard he's knocked down, always shaken, not stirred, always gadgets, always like the guy you wish you could be, like this ridiculous ideal scenario, right? And that's the Bond brand. And so that thing is the root, the cause, the foundation of choices then that come out that are the logo or the music or the way the posters look or the storyline. All of that comes around. Same thing with Eddie Murphy. If I go to see an Eddie Murphy show or whatever, I expect that it's going to be funny as hell, and then I'm going to laugh my head off, because that's his brand promise. Out of that then comes things that are appropriate. How do we package it appropriately so that it's in alignment? How do we promote it properly so that it's in alignment? I think people just don't get that what you're really talking about is reputation and expectation. If I know that James Bond is going to be excitement and is going to be, narrow escapes and all the rest of it, then that's the brand promise. And so then everything else has to come out of that. If all of a sudden James Bond is, 50 pounds overweight, riding a unicycle, juggling cats, I'm not going to believe that that's James Bond, because it's not on brand. And hopefully that will help some listeners, because I think that there's still so much confusion. You want to know what that experience is, and then you want to build every single thing around that to maintain and foster and make that experience true for as many people as possible.
Basically, what you're telling me, the brand is the core.
Yeah.
And then you have to build everything around that core.
Yeah, because if what I want is for you to walk away with an exciting thing, or look at Disney, right? I want you to walk away with a magical experience. Look at Disney and Six Flags side by side. Okay, Disney's got it all over Six Flags.
Yeah.
Why? Well, because when you go, Disney worries about every single touch point. What could we do to make this magical? What could we do to make this magical? Like they're constantly asking themselves that question. Okay, when you go into the thing, there's a rock and we're going to put a sword in it and you're going to see if you can pull Excalibur out. It's just a waiting area next to the merry-go-round. But they thought about it. Right. And it's like every single thing they did, it's like, okay, well, what if we have younger kids that, don't want to engage with the rides? Well, there are these little like found treasures all around it where you can go and you can do these little activities, or moms that are waiting can do these activities. Like they've thought about all of that.
Yep.
And that level of thinking to say, what can we do to make everything magical at every single touch? That's what makes that brand momentum work. And that, to your point, is what makes that core reality. And so when, Six Flags is like, we've got some really great roller coasters, or, we've got some really great rides. You're like, yeah, okay. But then all the middle stuff just falls apart because no one's thinking about it.
That's so important. And I know you recently posted about the Nike, the new Nike ad.
Yeah, the
that
Olympic ads.
What was the good thing about it? I really loved it. It was a little bit different with the old one that winning is not for everybody, but it was different.
What I think it did? I think it brought people back into it. 10 years ago or so, we started getting into this very ultra PC thing where like it's all for everybody all the time, But the truth of the matter is that not everybody gets to buy a Bentley, and not everybody gets to win a gold medal, and not everybody gets, that's not for everybody. And while progress, which I think is the big thing that Nike sells, is progress for all. Yeah, okay, that's true. But there's still, at the Olympic level, at the professional level, there's still a doorway that not everybody gets to go in. And what I think was so brilliant about the Nike work this time around was that for the first time in a long time, I saw Nike put the individual back again. Like, you remember the Michael Jordan spot? All the times that I failed. Yeah. I thought that was one of the most brilliant pieces of creative I've ever seen.
It was well done, yeah.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about it was the individual, right? We all think of him as this like ridiculous success. And he's like, here's all the times I bombed, right? Yeah. Like they passed the ball to me and I tanked it this many times. And, I tripped, or I fell, or I missed the shot, or I, didn't see the ball coming and I missed something, whatever. Like, all it was his failures. And at the very end, he says, it's because I fail that I succeed. And you're like, whoa, what an inspiration from a single person. And so now what Nike did was, hey, if you want to win, you got to get by me. And I want to win. Does that make me a bad person? And it's like, yes, that's the other side of it, right? Those are the gladiators at the top that are like the Michael Phelps of the world, that are like, I swim better than anybody is ever going to swim again, ever. And It's like, yeah. Get behind him and celebrate that. And I think everybody has been so wanting it to be for all people and all types. And that's great. And I think that there's a lot of good that comes from that, but it isn't everything. It's not the whole story. There are people that stand and rise above, and Nike took the moment to let them shine.
I think a lot of companies making a mistake. They want to be everything to everybody. We experienced that. And one day I told the whole, staff, I said, guys, we really got to zoom what we're good at it. Mm-hmm. And then just stay, and our core and the brand should be deliver what we do. If you're not good at something, we're not going to do that. But I think the problem right now is a lot of companies, they're going to do and satisfy the needs, like that kind of scarcity mind that I want to get this, even though I'm not good at, then would dilute the brand because they go do something that they actually not, it's not the core. Yeah. Do you have any experience with that?
I do. And I think that happens a couple of different ways. I think it can happen in an image capacity, and I think that it can happen in a service or product capacity. So I think a lot of businesses reach, in the interest of growth, they'll reach past their core skill set into something that's partial, right? And so you'll walk into these businesses and 80% of their revenue is coming from 20% of what they're doing, right? And they're wasting all this time and all this money and all this effort trying to get this trickle of stuff that comes in. And sometimes it's obvious, and I think sometimes it's not. The other day I saw a thing, it was Frito-Lay and I forget which of the beef jerky groups that it was, but basically they were taking Fritos and they crunched them up and then they put them inside of like basically a Slim Jim. And it looked awful. And they, when you read the article, it was like, well, people see food as creativity. And I was like, wait a second, you just shoved crunched up Fritos into, like a snack food. Like these two things don't go together. Like, and if somebody likes it, it's going to be this like crazy fringe group. So I don't know. In just taking a look at those kinds of things, it's like beef jerky doesn't need to have Frito-Lay chunks in it necessarily. Maybe someone's going to like that, but like that really feels to me like just a reach outside of their zone. So I do see a lot of that happening inside brand and product development. But I also see it in terms of the way that people try to reach outside of their zone. Agencies do it all the time. They're like, well, we understand brand, so we can create the campaigns and we can do the videos and we can do the media buying and we can do all the rest of this. And typically they don't do that well.
Bill, this is my question. What is the difference between brand image and brand voice, or how they correlate? Like how we can just, because, as you talk, and I listen to you, the brand image, your image of your business, your personal brand, and the voice, like how we can put this together.
So I think that's all down to tonality. What is the feel that you want your brand to have, and how do you want it to come across? So I think one of them is, sort of the structure of the brand. And then, how do you want to look? Are you, and they really, it's an interesting question because they're so closely tied together, those two ideas. I find them almost hard to think of as being separate, but it would be like, if, again, I'm going to go back to James Bond, right? If you want him to be cool and interesting and fashionable, then you don't put him in a bowling shirt and like suspender socks,
Sharp
right?
suit,
Like, yeah, it's that the tone of voice, the look and feel, the brand promise, the rest of it, they should all work collectively as one whole. And that really is, again, something that you should be thinking about and working towards, right? You can't reach a destination that can't be defined. You have to sit down and put the time into, how do we want people to perceive the brand? What do we want their takeaway to be? Are we high end? Are we low end? Are we for everybody? Are we for an exclusive few? Like, who is our target? Why is it our target? And I think in answering those questions, it becomes obvious how you want to take the brand into market. Like Liquid Death. And I'm going to position that against Evian, two water brands, right? Evian was like the sweet younger sister, and Liquid Death is like the rebel older brother who stumbles in drunk at 2 a.m. Like this is the difference between these two, right? Evian was like, we're pure and we're this and we're that. And it was these light pinks and light blues and like very soft and very delicate. And then Liquid Death is like blacks and golds and greens and like these hard edge colors. And the tone and the feel of the brand matches the way that they are wanting to be perceived, right? Liquid Death is literally shattering status quo imagery. They don't care about purity messages. They're not going to talk about what aquifer they're drawing their water from. Like that's not the point for that brand. And so they have a tremendous amount of freedom in the sense of being rebellious. When people send in, nasty messages about their brand, they flip them on their ear, and they're quick on their feet, and they're funny, and they are tongue in cheek.
They're good at it,
and they're good at it. On the other hand, Evian was calculated and precise and thought through in terms of, we want to maintain this air of purity. The famous picture of the woman taking a bath in the clawfoot tub, just pouring bottles of Evian in, or the angel that's pouring the water into the cloud to make rain. Like everything about what they did was just purity, 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 purity. And so there are great contrasts to take a look at those brands and see, like, how does the identity look and feel different? One of those brands has got a skull and the other one has got like a sunset, right? Like just everything about it has been thought through to be in alignment and in harmony. And that's what brand image and tonality really should be about.
And that gets me to this, that a lot of people out there that you might listen right now or watch this, this show, that they ask, how can I build my personal brand? Where should I start? Because a lot of people, they go actually copy somebody else, which is, I think it's not going to work because it's not you, but they're confused that where should I start to build my personal brand? Who am I? Should I copy somebody else? How is my brand image? They don't know the steps. Do you have any like a guidance, any steps that people that can say, oh, okay, identify yourself, or find your why, or connect with yourself? And it's really sometimes confusing for people how to build their personal brand, especially these days.
Yeah, I think that that's a great question. The answer to that is actually, I think, a little simpler in structure, difficult in execution, but simpler in structure than people give it credit for. So, number one is understand what is your one thing. Okay, Simon Sinek refers to this as your why. Other people refer to it in different ways. I like to think about it as your one thing, but a brand exists only to do one of two things. A brand either exists to make something possible or to make something go away. That's it. Like if you want to bake it off to its just simplest format, it's
what do you think by go away, Bill?
Okay, so
that's so interesting. You said you make it go.
So my boss is yelling at me because I can't get my TPS reports done on time. Okay. Your software promises that my TPS reports will be done in half the time. That's going to get my boss off my back. Therefore, I'm in. It's not that they care about the software. It's that you can make this thing go away from them. The same thing on the other side. I always wanted to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I've tried everything. Nothing worked. Your program made my idiot kid brother look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And if you can make him look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you can make anybody look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm in. So on that side, it's I want something and I can't get there. On the other side, it's I want to avoid something and I can't get there. Brands only exist to do one or two things. This is why when you come out and you say our blender has 3 speeds, but our blender has 4 speeds, but our blender has 5 speeds, nobody cares, because that's not what it's about. It isn't about the product. The product is irrelevant. You as a brand are irrelevant, except for what you can do to change somebody's circumstance for the better. That's what you have to understand. So when you understand your one thing, it's what is it that you can do? Our brand teaches businesses what story to tell so that they can scale. That's what we do. We are very, very good at understanding how to look at research and convert that research into a drop of opportunity that simplifies the way businesses operate on their sales and marketing efforts so that they can scale faster. That's it. That's all that we do. Now, the ancillary stuff that we do around it, developing a campaign or getting something into market or whatever, that's all secondary. What they're actually hiring us for is I don't know what to do to get past this stuck point. My company has more potential. How can I get it there? And we introduce them to a new tool that they don't have so that they can move forward. That's our one thing. Teaching companies what story to tell to scale is the one thing that we are really, really good at. Now, we happen to do that in the form of a branding or advertising or marketing, depending upon your particular language background, sense of the word. But in essence, the thing we give them is the ability to move up another notch. And that's how we sell it. So it doesn't matter how many people we have. It doesn't matter how long we've been in business. It doesn't matter how many awards we've won. It doesn't, like, that garbage doesn't matter. What matters is that they understand that if you are a business that is struggling with how to tell a story that's not just like everybody else so that you can stand up and stand out and move forward, then hey, those guys over at BrandBoss, they understand that, and that's what they're focused on. That level of clarity that we have allows the people who are evaluating us to have that level of understanding of what we do. That makes it easy for them to say yes or no. And so I think that's the big piece that everybody is confused about. They're like, well, we're a consulting agency that does this and does this and does this and does this. And all those does thises just confuse the heck out of the people trying to evaluate them. Instead, they need to lock down and say, what is the one thing that we're going to provide to this group? And when they do that, it makes everything about their value go up because they are understood faster. The clarity about what they bring comes faster. Their value is higher because they don't come across as, a multi-tool, right? They're not a Swiss Army knife. They're a screwdriver. And hey, right now I need a screwdriver. I don't need a hammer and a nail. I need a screwdriver. And so I think the more that you can establish that right off the bat, that's great. Now, to the second part of your question, which was, should you copy somebody else? In terms of structure of outreach, I think that there's a lot that can be learned there. This gets me into another point, which is there is no competition. I'm going to come back to that in a second.
Yeah.
But if you want to take a look at how a business does productizing their services, how do I turn it into a number one, a number two, or a number three? How do I identify an operational simplicity? How do I present myself to people? Like what kinds of media should I be considering? Then yes, take a look and get a general foundational understanding of how people in the market currently come in contact with that information and what types of information they're used to getting. You can either follow suit or you can disrupt, but at least then you're educated. Once you've done that, I then trip into my next piece, which is there is no competition. Once you have learned from the competition what you needed to learn to get started, cut them off from your consideration set.
Why?
Because the only people that you should ever compete with are yourself. Your reflection in the mirror, what you did yesterday, what you think you can do tomorrow, is the only competition that matters. Because if you measure yourself by another company, you are always limited to the best performer's top performance. Look at Nike. Nike at $46 billion has no competition anymore. They are more successful than anybody else. Apple has the same problem. There is no one to look to anymore. They're so far past everybody else. If they kept looking back, they would limit themselves. Now the question that they're asking themselves is the same question that the rowdy startup is asking. What's next? And that's what Steve Jobs was so fantastic at. Steve Jobs was like, doesn't exist yet. That doesn't mean it can't. He was a master of not living in what is, but living in what if.
What if?
And in living in the what if moment gives you complete and total freedom. A quote that he did, and I'm horribly paraphrasing because I can't remember it verbatim, but it was so great, was I pushed the universe and it moved. And I was so surprised I pushed it again to see what would happen next. He went out and did something that didn't exist. He sold computers that didn't really exist, and he and Steve Wozniak were soldering them together in the garage. And he was like, people actually bought them. Let's see what else they'll do, right? And he just went out and he said, well, what if? And some of the what ifs failed. Lisa failed, I've forgotten what next failed, right? Like these things were all horrible failures. But along the way, he learned, and he continued to learn, and he continued to learn, and he surrounded himself with people that could help him operationally where he was weak. And eventually, he just what-ifed himself into ultimate success.
Why in some companies, based on what you just explained, is that your story is going to take you to the next level if you do it right, if you extract that story, and why some companies, they are avoiding to tell their stories?
Because they don't believe it will work. MBA programs don't teach this well. I blame Harvard. I really do. Because as Harvard goes, so do the MBA programs in the world. And Harvard doesn't, if you look at Harvard's curriculum about, and I'm not picking on Harvard really, but if you take a look at MBA programs curriculum, it's like operations, management, case study exploration, da-da-da-da-da. Oh yeah, and then before you graduate, go get your marketing 101 and 102, and then hurry back to the important stuff, finance, discussions like blah, blah, blah. You've got to understand that there's value in connecting with the person who has to buy from you. And the sales product belief set is, well, if I build a better pen, then they're going to want to buy it because it's a better pen. What they don't realize is nobody cares about a pen for the pen's sake. A better pen is irrelevant. I wouldn't know how to evaluate this pen from that pen on a bet because I'm not a pen manufacturer. So until you stand for something, consumers really have no way to relate to the internal excitement that you have about your product or service development. And businesses, they don't understand that. So I think a lot of times it's a total lack of understanding of what it is. And then I think the biggest second factor, which is really the first factor, is fear and ignorance around how marketing works. They don't have they don't understand what it is. They don't understand how it works, and so they don't have any patience for it. And I know that you can identify with this. Yeah. How many clients have come to you and been like, I went to the gym and I took a vitamin. Why don't I look like the Soloflex guy?
All the time.
And every day, right? And it's so prevalent. It's such a part of our everyday conversation that you would think that the business leaders would eventually, the VCs and the business leaders, and they would hear this and they would go, huh, hey, Bob, I'm looking at the success of Liquid Death and Dollar Shave Club and Apple and Nike and Disney. They don't talk about their products. Hey, Bob, is there something to it? But for whatever reason, they don't. And so they just keep wandering around in the dark going, well, we must need 2 caps. Yeah. And we must need 2 different color inks. It's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling.
That works when they start writing a campaign and you ask them that, why are you writing this campaign for? We just need to increase our sales. I said,
yeah. So really? T-Mobile is running this spot right now where they're like remaking Flashdance songs to sell cable. I mean, I did a thing on it the other day. I was like, why? Downey's doing the same thing. They're buying royalties to these songs that were popular in the 80s or 90s. And they're like rejiggering the words to be about stain removal. I mean, it's just the dumbest, dumbest waste of time and money and effort. Like, who's walking down the street going, to Eye of the Tiger, like, got to take a stain out of my shirt? No one. The answer to the question is no one. It's stupid. But they truly, they think that this is, this is creative, man, and it's amazing. And it just shows that they just don't.
Did you listen to Seth Godin? He had a great analogy. He said, if the Nike wants to go to open a hotel, or Marriott wants to go make a shoe, which one will be successful? It was amazing. And he said, of course, Nike, everybody goes to Nike, but Marriott, nobody's going to wear it. Why is that? How? It was a great thing behind it, that the power of Nike, and that's the brand.
And I think Apple could make the same claim, right? I mean, if Dell Computer came out with an iPod or an iPad, you'd be like, so what, right? And good luck with them bringing out watches. Like, think about how many people in the world wearing an iWatch, an Apple Watch, right? And Apple's just like, I mean, not so much now that Steve is gone, because I don't think Tim is conceptual that way. But it was like, well, let's just see, how cool would this thing be? And let's see, let's say we reimagine this or we reimagine that. And I think that's what makes those brands so cool, is that you would go to an Apple hotel. You'd go to an Apple hotel because you would know it was going to be elegant. Yes. You'd know it was going to be a really cool experience. And every single thing that you wore or touched would somehow do something cool. Like, you wouldn't get a key card. You'd wave your watch underneath the thing. And then when you went to your door, it would just open. And you'd be like, yeah, that's really cool. Like, you'd geek out on the fun of it. But if everybody else did it, it would be boring. Like, if Dell did it, it would be like, please stand in the yellow shoes on the floor, right? Like, they just don't get it. Like, they just don't get it. And so the experience wouldn't be fun or interesting or playful or engaging. And I think,
and Steve Jobs did a great job that the experience. I went to the Apple store, and in the morning, all the laptops, they are 45 angle open. And I asked the manager, I was the first one, I said, why these laptops are like that? He said, this is our corporate policy. And I went I dug it out and I read about it, because they want you to go touch it, open it.
Right.
I said, oh my God, what a genius. They want you to feel the product, get that power feeling. I never thought about that. I said, these guys, they leave it 45 open?
Listen,
genius.
Apple is genius at a lot of things like this. One of the things that they did when they were fighting in the tablet wars is they would pick a third world country, right? They would get bids from all these different countries to build the iPads. And then they would go, an entire fleet of operations people would go into these countries and they would literally build the development line to be more efficient than the lowest cost. So why reach for a screw that requires a step, right? Like, oh, okay, I'm going to get that tool. I'm going to take a step, grab the screw, come back and put it in. They were like, no, the screw's right here. The difference between this move and this move is a second or two. Now I want you to take that second or two for every single position down the line for everything that they do. And you add that up. And all of a sudden that second or two becomes a day. And that day becomes a week. And that week becomes a month of productivity time. And that's what they did to win. They made a product so efficiently that the other groups couldn't compete on it with price. So like, and that's the same thing I was talking a while ago about Disney. Like Disney thinks, what if I was a tired mom with a toddler with two teenage kids that were off running around on the rides? What would make it magical for me? And that's exactly what you're describing for Apple. They're just doing it on the production level and the engagement level. They're saying, okay, so someone comes into a store. For most people, it's like, well, we need products on shelves, right? That's the Best Buy or the Walmart. Like just put a bunch of stuff in there. People will buy it because it's there. We just need variety. But what Apple does is they come in and they say, what's the lighting like?
Yep.
What is all glass walls. Why? More expensive to heat and cool, but everybody sees how many people are in there all the time and they see our products all the time. And so it's like drawing you into the zoo. Okay, then we're going to have Apple Care people, but we're not going to call them service people. We're going to call them geniuses.
Yes.
And it's like, see what I mean? They go inch by inch by inch by inch. And they say, it's like Vince Lombardi said, right? Success is a game of inches. They go, we're going to take this thing up and then we're going to take this thing up and then we're going to take this thing up and we're going to take this thing up. And they just raise the water level 1 inch at a time. Everybody else is looking for a magic bullet. I want to take a vitamin, go to the gym, and look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I want it now. And then when they don't get it, they fire their agency or they fire their CMOs or they fire their sales team, and they start again and they start again and they start again, and they can't figure out why they're not getting traction. It's because they have no patience to sit down and think through every meticulous step. And if they would just do that, they couldn't believe the explosive growth that they would get.
That's what when I go to our local gym, and I go to gym every day, and I see.
Yeah, look at you, by the way.
Yeah, no, you're taking.
Look at you.
And then thank you. And
you have to get bigger shirts.
Yeah, and I see people, Bill. They do so many exercises wrong. Okay, they're gonna hurt themselves. And I was thinking that, like the Apple, why they don't put certified coach, whatever you want to call it, genius, whatever, and they walk around the gym. And if they see somebody does something wrong and they go to him and say, excuse me, ma'am, sir, with all respect, can I help you? With the way you do it, you're going to hurt your back, your arm, whatever. And let me show you how to do it the right way. Do it like that. That experience by itself will bring so many clients to that gym, but I see it, nobody does it.
And you know why? You know why? Because they think, and this is such a great example of like short-sighted thinking. They think if we do that, then they won't hire a coach. So if you want to know how to lift properly, you have to hire one of our coaches. Our gym does it too. And it's ridiculous. And you're right. If you just had people walking around that were like, listen, right now, tell me what muscle group you're trying to connect with. Because if you think you're doing your lats right now, you're not. You're actually doing shoulder. Or if you think you're doing this, you're doing that. If you had a group of people that were fit, that were walking around, that knew how to use the equipment that way, that were able to do it, then I think it would be brilliant. The other problem is that they'll hire people who clearly are not in the workout culture to try to train people to be in the workout culture, which I think is another mistake. And while that is not to say that people who are not physically fit are not capable of doing it, visual is so important to people in that kind of an environment. Given, if you had 6 people lined up and one of them was like a bodybuilder type and everybody else was regular, I promise you 9 people out of 10 would go to the bodybuilder and would say, can you please help me? Because the proof is standing in front of you. Now, the rest of those people might understand how to do it and they might not. But the simple truth is that they haven't done it so that you can see the evidence. And we're visual people that way. So in that kind of an environment, I think that brand, right, is all about the proof is in the pudding. Look at the people that we've chosen. Let us help you get I think it's such a loss.
And I go back to
everywhere.
what you said, that creating the value.
Yeah.
What value are you going to create? Because you work with a lot of people. I'm sure you ask them, what are you trying to do? What value are you trying to create for the customer, for the clients? If you do that, you're going to win. But if you don't do that, it's going to be very hard to win, especially right now in that landscape of whatever is happening. It's really hard to win a customer, just not for sake of, hey, I have a pen, money's better than the next door. It's not going to happen.
I talked to a company the other day. It's a 100-year-old company that's
Wow.
over $70 million. And first thing I asked them was, what's your brand promise? What do you stand for? And he said, that's why we're on the phone.
After 100 years?
After 100 years.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
And they are a solid brand. They are, you know, they have achieved by most brand standpoints. You know, they've hit $70+ million in top line annual revenue. I am positive that they have a solid profitability model, given the fact that they've lasted the time that they have. And the man is on the phone with me saying, I could really benefit, our team could really benefit from being different because we have no idea how to differentiate ourselves. And as the competitive landscape starts coming around them, groups that weren't in their space as a part of their innovation and expansion are starting to encroach on the fringes of what they do. They're realizing, and I said, well, how do you market? He says, well, it's all pretty much, you know, social and digital and SEO and the rest of it. I said, where's your awareness? Like, you're a $70 million brand. And he goes, well, our products have a good reputation. I said, yes, but they're not top of mind. Like, how in the world are you going to stay top of mind? And he goes, that's why we're talking. Like, the team had gotten so used to the way that they had always done it that new groups that were coming in were cleaning their clock. And he said, you know, it hasn't started happening in earnest, but our growth has slowed from 15 or 20% growth per year down to 5 or 6%. And so he's like, you know, if you look over time, you know, our curve is coming down. And the bottom line is that just making a great product isn't enough anymore. There are way too many competitors that are way too willing to be out in the marketplace. You can't just be part of the chorus anymore. You have to choose your spotlight and stand in it.
And I believe that some people, they said, hey, I want to bring my price down. I don't think so. That's relevant. Like, you know, price, I think, is obsolete when you create that value and give the good service or stand behind your brand. I think price is not I don't think so. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. When I hear that, when we do research for companies and the first thing that we hear is price, I always tell them, you're doing just fine. When all that's left to complain about is price, you're perfect. Because everybody's going to complain about price, right? Everybody wants everything for free, right? So it's like, you just don't worry about that. Now, are there, you know, can you price yourself out of consideration? Sure. But take a look at Disney. It's $15, $20 for a sandwich that you could make for $2 any day of the week,
Yeah.
right? You go to Apple, you know, their laptops are $3,000, $2,000.
And it's still people buying it.
Right. But that's the point. And that's the same point with Bentley. And that's the same point with Porsche and Ferrari. And there's a scale of exclusivity and precision and whatever that as long as you are priced appropriately for what you're doing and you are creating that understanding of your value, unless you're just completely out of whack, there should be a very appropriate audience that is there for you always. And I think businesses just don't trust that sometimes, and so they do. We were working with Precision Tune Auto Care a number of years ago, and on the heels of the success of Jiffy Lube, the corporate office had gotten, and certainly the franchisees had gotten sort of territorial about oil changes. So all of a sudden they started pushing oil changes instead of brake jobs, engine maintenance, these high ticket items that Jiffy Lube couldn't do.
Yeah.
They dropped down to start competing with a $30 oil change. And then Jiffy Lube dialed in their model and went from $30 oil changes to $15 oil changes. And it doesn't take a Harvard MBA to understand that if you fill your bays with $15 jobs instead of $350 jobs, you're going to go broke pretty quick. And it was really interesting to come into that environment. The first problem we had to solve had nothing to do with brand. The first problem we had to solve was getting them off the opioid crisis of couponing. And it was like, there is no loyalty to the $15 oil change person, right? That's not who you are. That's not what you are. But they'd gotten so used to it. They were like, you can't take this away. I'm like, why are you worried about an oil change? Like, oil changes is the gravy. That's like the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
That's not what you do. You're a dealership surrogate. Like, you're competing with engine jobs and transmission jobs and brake jobs for less. Like, why are you even down here competing at this? It took 6 months to really get them to let go because they were so committed to, but we're in this to win it. We're in this fight. And I was like, but you're fighting the wrong fight. And once we did that, once we pried the coupons out of their hands, the 2 states that we managed held the highest ticket average in the country for over a year until corporate finally came knocking on the door and was like, what are you doing? Right. But like we were having to operate on the state level because corporate had gotten so invested in this idea that it wasn't until we could prove longevity, right? Like here we have all of this, we've returned back to the things that we're supposed to be doing. And once we've shown people that we were doing it, they came back again. They started being loyal and they started being a part of the program. But it's, once a perception is rooted in a company, it's really hard to get them shake loose of it.
Oh, it's very hard. Like everybody, a lot of people, they do media video production and, we do it differently. Everybody asks us, your packages are decent. It's kind of expensive, but, decent. And they don't understand that when they come here, actually, we listen, we extract their story. We have a scriptwriter next to them. We have a, producer. It's not just go in front of the camera, okay, start talking. Yeah. Because believe it or not, well, we have CEOs that coming here and they're pacing, memorizing what they're going to say. And I grab it and I kind of tore it. And he said, why did you do that? I said, after 30 years, you have to know where you stand, what you're going to say, where you exist. And you got to sit there and you got to tell me your story. Just talk. And then after they do that and we coach them through it and then we edit it, said, this is actually you.
Yeah.
It's amazing that going back to you, that you said the core, that your brand voice, that you got to have that story. Otherwise, it's not going to work. What are you going after? What are you going to sell really? Is it an oil change or something that you're good at it? The one that you said what you do, the one.
I laugh a lot when I'm on, and my TikTok story, which is
ridiculous.
Like I should never have been on TikTok.
But it works, man. I love it.
Who knew, right? Who knew? I tell Tom, the guy who told me to get on every day, I'm like, thank you. Like, thank you. Because I told him it was never going to work. And I went on to prove to him wrong. But I think it's really funny when I go on social, there are so many people selling likes.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, I can teach you how to make a viral video. And I just shake my head. A viral video for what? Like, oh, okay, you put a cat in a I don't know, in a blender. Like, oh, there's your viral video. Okay, now the question is, what does it bring you? And
what have you learned?
It's the same thing as, sales versus sell-through for businesses that are so sales focused, right? They'll be like, oh my gosh, I got my product in 200 CVSs across the country. And I'm like, yeah, but you're only marketing in Wisconsin. And they're like, yeah. But but we're everywhere now. And I'm like, you realize you're going to buy all that back, right? And not only are you going to buy it back, then you're going to have to pay shipping to have it brought back to your factory. Like they just,
It's
what do you
amazing.
get out of it? There's no strategy to their strategy. There's no there. They're just doing things. I would never, ever want to create a viral video for the sake of creating a viral video. Like I could care less. I want to do something that actually has traction. I would rather get one follower a day who was a potential client than I would to have 1,000 followers a day that were just watching me and would never do anything.
I get up and I'm going to the gym, and as soon as I get to the car, I say, let me see what is Bill up to. And I listen to you while I'm going to the gym, because I told you your TikTok, you did a fantastic, it's very educational. It's not about the likes, it's not about the follows, it's about the creating that value that you said, because you say something that nobody would say until they charge people for it. Like the stuff that you say, like a brand voice this and experience it. Those are like a bits of experience that you share and the knowledge that I don't think so people are still getting it. I get it. All my friends are getting it. That is so good. And if you learn it, you can implement that. I promise you, they will be in a better position.
I think the way that I look at it is this, and this is one of those things that I think Gary Vaynerchuk gets right.
Yeah.
He talks about give it all away, right? And I think that's perfectly put, because you do. And the reason that you give it away is because it makes them better clients. That's why you do it. You don't do it because you're giving it away. And that's such the wrong way to look at it. Every time somebody calls me, they're like, you explained this piece. That made sense to me. Can you explain some more of it? And then as we talk about it, then they come around and say, well, now I understand and appreciate it. I still can't do it. And even the groups that do, and it's a rare few, I'll meet with somebody and I'll spend an hour or 45 minutes with them on the phone talking about their business. And I'm just trying to help them get through the whole thing. And at the end of it, every once in a while, I'll get an email and it was like, you know what? We don't need to go to the next step. Like you gave us so much. Now we think we can pick it up and we can go with it. And in the beginning, I was like kind of upset about that, because I was like, oh my gosh, that like
I just lost the client.
I missed a sale. Right. But then what I realized is every time that they succeed, they're saying to their friends, you got to listen to this guy. Like he gave us this input.
That's the key.
And those are the people that call me and say, I just watched Bob do it. That's amazing. How can I do it? And it starts all over again. So once you realize that, you know, and here's the other thing. There are 33 million small and medium-sized businesses in the United States.
Wow.
99% of the businesses in the USA are SMBs.
Yep.
Okay, there's only 41,500 enterprise-sized businesses. It's not even a percent. So when you think about the influence that you can have by building community against that mass, there's never going to be an end to that well. There will always be another 400,000 new businesses a year. There will always be perpetual need. So you don't have to worry about it. So the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I would get on every stage. I would be on every podcast. Anybody that's out there that's listening that ever wanted me to be a guest speaker, that wanted to call me,
Amazing.
I would gladly do it. Because the more people that walk away with just an inkling more understanding, they have a better chance at succeeding. They have a better chance at understanding. They have a better chance at reaching their potential. They have a better chance of hiring more people. And I see that as our biggest responsibility. The more we help those businesses succeed, the more they hire people, the more people they hire, the more people, families have food on their table. Like that's the whole thing. Their dreams come true. Their people are hired, like they progress. It's good for everybody. It works.
Yeah, no, actually, be honest with you, you said it speaking. I have an event is coming in November, and I was thinking for you to be one of the speakers, and I'm saying it's just like a half a day, like a seminar, and this is all business entrepreneurs, startups, And I need somebody that you're filled with your experience to come and kind of educate them about the brand voice, and all that.
Oh, I'd love to do that. That'd be a lot
I
of
will
fun.
tell
Yeah,
the
count me
team
in.
to do that, and then I'll meet you in the person, and it's going to be fun because there are other speakers that you're going to really like. But what is the Brand Boss headquarters up to these days? Where are you going? And what kind of clients you work with? If somebody wants to work with you, listen to this and say, "Hey, my God, man, I need something."
You know, there are a couple of really fun clients that we've got. We're working with Blue Delta Jeans, which is really fun. All bespoke jeans out of Mississippi. They are
Wow.
amazing. Like once I put on my first pair, I never took them off. And I know that a lot of people say that kind of stuff, but it's
I
like
have
they
to
fit
try.
so well. I'm like, I'm in. We wound up, and again, this was a crazy thing. We're working with Lumi, the personal deodorant brand.
Oh yeah.
The founder found me on TikTok, and
There you go.
we started a dialogue. And the next thing you know, they're a massive brand, and they're super, super fun and exciting to work with. And then on the other side, we've got small emerging size businesses. So our docket right now is between just a little over $500 million down to a company that's probably 5 or 10 million. The common denominator for all of them is that they want scale.
Yep.
I'm much less worried about you have to be this big, you have to be a business of this size, and I'm much more worried about, are you willing to be great?
Yeah,
Because if you're willing to
amazing.
be great, then you've got something that we can work with. And if you're not, then what's going to happen is you're going to go through the process, and then you're going to go right back to what you used to do.
Yep.
So that's kind of how we look at it. So our next big things are going to be webinars, stacking time, being able
Wow.
to get in front of more people, probably more public speaking, more access to more people who need it. So I'm thinking about different models where I can get in front of groups of people at a time to be able to help educate faster.
Wow. But if somebody wants to get a hold of you, it's just a TikTok, guys. You go in there, TikTok, Bill Harper, like a Brand Boss headquarter TikTok, watch it. You will learn so much. I learned so much. I'm a big fan of you, Micah.
BrandBossHQ.com if you want to find us. But it's been such an exciting last year and a half. I can't wait to see where things go from here.
Man, it's great, man. It was nice talking to you, Bill. As always, thank you. Thank you for being here. You guys are doing a fantastic job. I really, really appreciate it, man.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I look forward to talking again about November. That'll be fun.
Oh, absolutely. You're definitely going to be here.
That sounds perfect.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day.
And you.